I'm just going to start this thing off. A little bit of background lore. Back in May, I was at the Valentino Con Cinco de Mayo show, and I heard him drop Satisfaction by Benny Benassi. Before we jump into this, I'll just go ahead and play like the important parts right here. Yo, what up guys? It's me. I am going to talk over just this part right here in the attempt to avoid a copyright claim. Just letting you know that I put this remix on SoundCloud. You can hear the whole thing. The link is in the description. Also, it's not a remix. It's called an edit. Like I call it an edit because it's not an official remix. For it to be called a remix, it would kind of need to be like, you know, officially released by the label and put on all streaming platforms. I'm gonna show how I made it in this video. So since this is a bootleg, what I did is I just went and found the acapella. I just found it on, I think, YouTube or Google. I don't remember where. I'm gonna play everything dry and then I'll show you what I did.
Push me and then just touch me till I can get my satisfaction.
All I did here for the intro was just minor EQing, a little bit of reverb that's being automated, which we can show you in a little bit. And then this preset and riff called Make Room, which I think is a great vocal preset. It just kind of adds a little crunch and a little bit of delay to it.
Push me and then just touch me till I can get my satisfaction.
It's nice for using like one element to fill up a whole bunch of space, which is essentially what the vocal is doing, because like that's all this intro is.
Push me and then just touch me.
All right, enter drum fill number 1. This is a sample that I found. I'll play the whole thing. It just sounds like this. All I did is just kind of cut it up a little bit for the fill right here. So it goes, and then I took that same sample and cut it up to kind of like follow the same rhythm as the vocal. So it goes.
Push me and then just touch me till I can get my.
Pretty basic step. I'm gonna build this on every element I show. I'm gonna play them together and then we're gonna keep adding on to it. Also, I took the riff level down, so the delay on the vocals kind of cuts out right here.
Push me and then just touch me.
And just goes like completely dry.
Get my.
Add like a little hi-hat on the offbeat.
Push me and then just touch me.
One little clappy boy.
Push me and then just touch me.
And then this little psytrance plucky thing just to kind of like sort of introduces the key of the song. Kind of devious.
Push me and then just touch me till I can get my.
All right, you'll notice right here the delay is slowly coming back in on the vocal, which is minor but also kind of nice. And then it's all just about layering. We introduce a kick and my favorite thing ever, these little guys, these little clap guys right here. From here, it's all about transitioning into that one part. You know which part I'm talking about. The part everyone knows, which I did just by bringing in like a little riser, this small little snare build here. The pluck slowly kind of fades out here on the volume. No, it doesn't. What is this controlling? Oh, it's controlling nothing. That's just a useless automation clip. You put those in to make the project look cooler. They're not doing anything. Vocal sort of washes out right here on the reverb level.
Satisfaction, 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 satisfaction.
Big, huge, like drawn out washout thing, because we're going into like where if you were mixing this into a set or something. I just kept the intro basic for the sheer purpose of that, you know. Originally just made this as a DJ tool. A tool for DJs. So for this part, I used a combination of just the original song. And then I also did a little layering. So I have the MIDI here for that exact same synth that we just listened to, you know, the iconic Satisfaction MIDI pattern here, which sounds like this. Now this synth, it's basically, okay, it's like almost the initial Serum preset. I just have it on oscillator A. It's on I Can Has Kick. Let me just turn everything off. And then in order to beat this thing up, all you gotta do is turn the sub oscillator on here, drop it down an octave. And And then a crucial step is turning on the white noise here. Other than that, it's mostly just compression. Inside Serum, not really much is changing, but I mediated that just through a gracious amount of OTT. You know, like a regal amount, like a respectable amount. Not like a dangerous amount or anything, but you can notice the difference when you play it now. The thick boy. And then the EQ is mostly just cutting out a little bit of the low end here. It's a very subtle addition. This sound, when it's got all the reverb on it, it's like a lot what gives it its charm. I do use this a little bit more further in the project file, which we will show when we get there. On the build, you will notice I have a reverb on the master, which, you know, some may say, hey, Nate, what are you doing? I like to live life dangerously. This reverb that I have on the master, you can see the low cut. This is crucial. If you're ever going to put reverb on your master, number one, don't have the reverb activated all the time, obviously, unless you're making like, you're taking like an already made song and then slowing it down and adding reverb and then uploading it to Spotify and calling it the slowed and reverb version, which then goes on to get like 3 times as many plays as the original song. You know, then maybe go for it. In the context here, I'm just automating the wet right here. As soon as that snare comes in, we're gone. We're done. That's it. It's like, get out of here. In the context of sinning, I have OTT on my master. It's at 29% with the outgain at 5.5 decibels. Now you'll notice here, it's off on the build. That's because I'm using the original song. I didn't want to compress it anymore. But as soon as the drop comes, we crank it back up. This is me explaining how I made the song, and I never want it to be misconstrued as me being like, hey guys, you should put OTT on your master channel. Do it. Okay, moving on the build. It's mostly just the synth washed out into a big wet sopping, like, you know, mess until it cuts back to nothing. I do that a lot in buildups. Same snare buildup right here. Layered with this thing. A very subtle and minor detail that I think adds a lot is very quietly putting this little vocal here where it's just someone screaming, "Are you ready? It's like, you can barely even hear it. A more important detail would be this little chop here from the original vocal, which just goes like this. And then I have this big ass cashmere snare here. It goes a little bit longer, but I just cut it right there. And then we go into drop mode. Now for this drop, I was trying so hard to figure out how to make this song be at 150 beats per minute. I tried just doing like the original synth and it just sounded so unnatural at that tempo. And I just wasn't into it. And then I was like, well, okay, what if I didn't do the synth and I just did some loud distorted sub? And that's basically what happened. I wanted the kind of like, oh shit factor, you know? So I did like a little bit of a fake out. The Satisfaction MIDI right here played on this just distorted to all fuck Serum preset that we have going on here. I'm going to play it dry so that you can kind of hear how subtle EQ adjustments and stuff can really change how the shit sounds. I added more distortion. It was too much. So I took it off, but more OTT. This is the drop. This thing has to take up all of the space needed. Basically low and mid range, not too much high because the vocal comes in and covers that area later, but this thing has a lot of ground to cover. And then this small little EQ adjustment right here. If I just left it like that, it would be chaos. So in order to make this work, what I did is automated an LFO in Serum. You can see right here, it's a very small adjustment. And it basically closes the gap. So like when the beat actually drops and the drums come in and every other element comes in, it sucks back down into its little shell and is like, okay, I'm just kidding. I don't want to be out here this. I'm too exposed. So we can see. Inside this Serum preset, LFO3 is modulating the frequency of the distortion right here, which is a pretty important thing. So I'll play this out. And if I just increase this, That's what's kind of giving it its movement here. So like, and if you decrease the rate, you have that more open sound. And then when you increase the rate, it gives it the bounce that that we so desperately require for this to work. If you want to hear how it would sound if I didn't make that adjustment, we can do that here real quick too. It's shit. I did a very intense sidechain here. It lets the kick literally just like power the fuck through. Also, I've spoken about this a couple times. If you do sidechain with like an automated, you know, manually drawn in curve like this, one thing that I do a lot, I just move it over like that, but you can do it all at once, you know. If you just move it over slightly, that way it triggers just like a split tiniest little moment before anything actually happens. It's a subtle difference that you might not like always notice, and then there's other times where you absolutely will notice. You'll be like, oh, holy shit, that sounds so much better, because the sound that's being sidechained starts to like duck out before the kick even happens. And then you can see here I have like the most aggressive curve ever. If I turn this up, it's not as hard. And then that one is just like the kicks like move out of the way. This is my song. I'm here to dominate. Also, let me go through the drum processing here real quick. There's nothing on this kick. All I did was like, here's the sample on its own. See this big kick? See how much like girth and weight is just chilling here at the end? And then look what happens when I play it over the sub. Oh! You want to talk about cage match, dude? This is like a cage match of like big brawlic lower frequencies in a cage match. And they're not like punching each other. They're just like bouldering into each other. They're like, and it's fucked. So to mediate that, rather than EQ out low end of your kick drum, you don't want to do that because you need that. I just warped the transients a little bit here in FL by just increasing the out parameter until I got a nice little snappy kick that is feeling right at home. And you can kind of do that by just playing it over and over again and going until you think it sounds good. So like, clean kick. Happy kick, happy life. What's a happy snare then? There is no happy snare in this song. There's a happy clap right there. I did the same thing. This type of changing and warping in the drums is not applicable to like every genre of dance music or just music in general. It's something I find myself doing quite a bit because I just, as long as the kick still has weight and the drums still have weight and they're not clashing with like other elements of the track, then I'm happy. And that's essentially all I did here. I think I did the same shit on this hi-hat. This is an open hi-hat sample.
It's my satisfaction. My satisfaction.
You get a tight little open hat there rather than a annoyingly loud and drawn out one. You'll see here, none of the drums are even on the mixer. And that's because I am irresponsible. But for this kind of beat, there's not really any reason to, you know, like what am I, it didn't even cross my mind when I was making it. I was like, oh, it already sounds good. I don't need to EQ anything. I don't need to compress them. I don't need to do anything. They sound completely fine the way they are. You know, as the saying is always gone, why fix what has been broken previously that doesn't need to be broken again in order to be fixed properly to operate how it should before it was broken. You don't. All right, so just that on its own is kind of hard, but still very empty. Let's move on to the vocal, because this thing is crucial as well for the drop. The vocal not only brings the listener back into the nostalgia of the song, but it drives the song almost as much as like the bass line does. The bass line's in the driver's seat, the vocal's in the passenger seat telling them where to go, reading off the navigation. Play it by itself first.
Till I can get my satisfaction.
It's the same one I used in the intro, same processing, except I just took the delay off because we don't want that shit in the drop. We want it to be nice and precise. I did some reverb automations here. I'm gonna play you guys the vocal without those reverb automations so you can see how much of a difference they make.
Till I can get my satisfaction. Wish me and just get me.
Almost there. Not quite. It's crazy, just like these little bits and bobs just fill out the song an unreasonable amount. Oldest trick in the book. Did a little bit of low cut here on the reverb, because if you don't, and then your reverb gets too, your reverb has too much low end on it, it'll muddy up your mix. The decay's not even up that much, and all I'm doing is automating the wetness. I've done this a gajillion times, even in like project breakdowns or just producing. Might as well, you know, go over it again. I'm an idiot. I just realized these are not vocal reverb. It's same exact concept. I just fucked up. That's not the vocal that's being reverbed. It's the bass. This is the vocal though. How do I restructure that so like it'll still make sense? I put reverb on the sub. You need to leave. But you'll notice again, the low cut, crucial. I love how I'm doing a project file breakdown and I forgot how I made this song. Now you guys got to realize something. The only reason I put reverb on my sub bass was because there's this element of distortion that it makes sense to reverb out the distorted element. If this was just a pure like sine wave sub bass, then no. Still a bit of a thick reverb, but it's not like category 5 tornado level reverb. It's like more like, hey, storms are coming. Maybe we ought to put up the storm windows, you know, that type of thing, like teetering on the edge of being concerned. But, you know, you don't have to like evacuate the town or anything. Maybe just put the car in the garage for the night. It's also crucial that you bring it back down to 0%, because if I don't, the whole song eats shit and dies. Now that is a category 5 hurricane. Control Z. We're back to safety. Mix down, mix down, mix down. Mix down is the most basic thing ever. It really is. It's all, I say this a lot, but it's all EQing, volume automation, or not volume, EQing, volume control, and compression. A combination of all of them. Also, for those that are like concerned about the OTT on the master, I'll turn it off. This is what it sounds like with it not on. You notice it's the same exact song. It's just not quite as like compression. It completes it. The majority of this is just in the mixdown. Everything's sidechain. Any low frequencies that don't need to be there are gone, aka the vocal. Little slight B section of the drop here. Same thing, but we just build on it by introducing like some more percussion. So I have this little loop right here. You'll notice here, cut the low frequencies, even if they don't exist, they do. And though they may be small and subtle, they'll just barge in and ruin your prized little mixdown. So get rid of them. Have that layered, and then with the goated collabs, these things also just add so much. Also added a chant, virtual riot chant. This is what it sounds like on its own. But just shortening it and then pitching it up a little bit. That's our new drum beat. Bass line stays exactly the same. Same with the vocal. And then a quick little transition period here. Keep all of that going, and all I did was sort of wash the vocal out with reverb and repeating just the satisfaction part. So
satisfaction, 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 satisfaction.
Right here, the last little transitional period, I cut out the distorted bass and instead brought back the OG, which you can kind of hear low passing in right now. And then I think I resampled the reverb from that sound. Like I resampled the reverb tail and then just reversed it. So we get this. Second drop, astoundingly similar. It was almost a copy paste situation, except I did a couple minor changes. One of them you'll see here on that same LFO automation. We have a little bit more going on this time. So it goes like this. Rather than just keeping it at one consistent rate, it's sort of fluctuating a little bit, which creates a little bit more of a groove. You just draw more points in the automation to create something new. I added a little laser sound effect here.
Push me and then just touch me till I can get my satisfaction.
Okay. Any questions?